Tonight, let's not begin with an emperor, let's begin with a city that cannot sleep. Rome is loud, restless, overcrowded. Torches flicker in narrow streets, arguments spill out of taverns. Somewhere nearby, a crowd gathers around a speaker promising order, while another promises justice, and neither sounds convincing anymore. In this Rome, power no longer belongs to laws. It belongs to whoever can stop the fear. And on a hill overlooking the city, a child is born, not into greatness but into a system already tearing itself apart. He's not strong, he's not loud, he's not supposed to win. Yet this boy will outlast generals, senators, ideals, and even the republic itself. As you listen, don't try to decide too quickly whether he is a hero or a villain. Instead, notice how power moves when people are tired, how freedom changes shape when peace becomes precious, and how Rome slowly chooses silence over struggle. Settle in. This is Slumber Scrolls, where history doesn't shout at you, it stays awake with you. A child born into a system already breaking, Rome does not feel calm in the year 63 BC. It feels crowded, it feels tense, it feels like a place holding its breath without knowing why. Streets twist tighter than they were ever meant to. Apartment blocks climb higher, stacked with families who arrive chasing grain, wages, or protection. Fires are common, so is shouting, so is fear. The Republic is powerful, richer than it has ever been, yet oddly unsure of itself. Victories pile up abroad while arguments grow sharper at home. Laws still exist, offices still rotate. But trust is thinning. It is into this Rome that a child is born on the Palatine Hill, not in a palace, not yet, but in one of the oldest and most politically loaded hills in the city. The Palatine is not just geography, it is memory made of stone. It is where Rome tells itself it began, where noble families quietly remind one another who belongs near the center and who does not. The child's name is Gaius Octavius. At first, it is an ordinary Roman name, functional, incomplete. Roman names are not fixed identities, they are frameworks waiting to be filled. A praenomen for familiarity, a nomen for clan, a cognomen for distinction, often earned later, sometimes invented, sometimes imposed by history itself. No one calls him Augustus yet, that name does not exist. It cannot exist. Rome is not ready for it. Octavius is born into advantage, but not comfort. His family belongs to the equestrian order, wealthy enough to matter, successful enough to be noticed, but not ancient enough to relax. The Octavii are rising, not rooted. In Rome, that distinction matters. Old families trace their names back through centuries like shields. New families work harder, watch more carefully, and feel the weight of every misstep. This is what Romans call novus homo culture. New men, new families, useful, capable, but always slightly suspect. Octavius grows up in a household that understands this anxiety. His father, also named Gaius Octavius, is respected, competent, and ambitious, but not secure. His mother, Aetia, comes from a different world. Through her, Octavius is connected to one of the most dangerous advantages Rome can offer: proximity to greatness. Aetia is the niece of Julius Caesar. In Rome, blood is not destiny, but it is leverage. At this moment, Caesar is not yet the man history will remember. He is important, rising, noticed, but still maneuvering. Even so, the connection matters. Doors open more easily, names are remembered, expectations hover. Yet Rome is not gentle with children, especially those born into politics. Octavius loses his father before he fully understands what a father is. The household rearranges itself. Adults step in and step out. Responsibility arrives early. In Roman elite culture, childhood is short and public life begins young. Boys are taught how to speak before they are taught how to feel. Words matter more than comfort. Posture matters more than play. He learns rhetoric not as art, but as survival. He watches funerals closely. In Rome, funerals are never private. They are performances staged in public space. Faces of ancestors are displayed. Speeches are delivered not only to honor the dead, but to shape the living memory of the family. Reputation does not die when a man dies. It is recycled, edited, and passed forward. When Octavius gives a funeral speech at the age of 12, Rome notices, not because the speech is brilliant, but because it exists at all. A boy standing in a space meant for men, speaking the language of legacy. It is an early lesson in how Rome rewards composure and remembers audacity. Outside the household, the Republic continues to fracture. Older Romans still speak of Marius and Sulla in lowered voices. They remember soldiers marching on Rome. They remember lists of names posted in public, citizens declared enemies overnight, property seized, lives erased by decree. Sulla had resigned his dictatorship years earlier, but the memory of what he had done never left. It lingered like a warning no one could unlearn. Rome had discovered something dangerous, that violence could be legalized and power could be taken back only if someone chose to give it up. The Constitution still functions on paper, elections are held, offices rotate, but belief has weakened. People begin to look less at laws and more at generals. Armies grow loyal to men, not institutions. Pay matters, promises matter, ideals begin to sound expensive. Octavius grows up absorbing all of this without comment. He is not loud, he is not physically imposing, he does not resemble the traditional Roman hero. This too becomes part of his education. In a city full of men who shout, the quiet ones are often underestimated. Youth becomes a form of invisibility. Invisibility becomes freedom. By the time Octavius reaches adolescence, Rome is no longer drifting. It is sliding. The Republic still claims to rule itself, but everyone senses that something new is forming underneath the old language. No one agrees on what that new thing should be. Some want restoration, some want control. Most want stability, even if they are not yet willing to admit it. The boy on the Palatine is watching. He is watching how names work, how memory works, how fear moves faster than law, how loyalty follows payment, how tradition can survive even when belief does not. Nothing about his early life suggests he will become emperor. But everything about Rome suggests it is waiting for someone who understands its contradictions. This is not yet the story of Augustus. It is the story of a child born into a system that is already breaking, learning its weaknesses before he ever learns its rules. And whether he will one day save Rome, reshape it, or quietly end it without saying goodbye, that question has already begun to form, long before he ever knows his future name. Bloodlines, status, and the anxiety of being new. In Rome, not all success feels the same. Some families move through the city with an ease that comes from centuries of familiarity. Their names are carved into temples, laws, and old stories. Others arrive later. They rise through service, money, and timing. They work harder to stay visible. They watch the room more carefully. The Octavii belong to this second group. Gaius Octavius, the father of the future Augustus, comes from a family that has done well, but not forever. They are equestrians, wealthy, respected, capable, but not members of the tight circle of ancient senatorial clans. That difference shapes everything. In Rome, status is not just about how much you have. It is about how long your family has had it. The Octavii are successful enough to matter, yet new enough to feel exposed. This produces a certain kind of household atmosphere. Ambition is encouraged, but mistakes are feared. Public behavior is watched closely. Reputation must be protected because it has not yet hardened into something unbreakable. For young Octavian, this means growing up in a world where achievement is expected, but forgiveness is not guaranteed. Romans have a phrase for families like the Octavii, novus homo. It sounds neutral. It is not. A novus homo is a new man, someone whose family has reached high office for the first time. In theory, this should be celebrated. Rome claims to reward merit. In practice, novelty carries suspicion. New families are assumed to be ambitious, restless, and potentially dangerous. Old families inherit authority. New families must justify it again and again. This creates a quiet pressure, a constant need to prove loyalty to Roman tradition while also pushing forward. For Octavian, this tension becomes part of his character. He learns early that success alone is not enough. It must be framed correctly, it must look appropriate. It must not frighten the people who already feel they are losing control of their city. Rome tolerates new men. It does not trust them. If Octavian's father represents disciplined ambition, his mother Attia represents something more volatile, connection. Attia is the niece of Julius Caesar. This does not automatically grant protection, but it changes the texture of Octavian's life. It places him within sight of power, even if he does not yet stand inside it. In Rome, kinship is not emotional first. It is structural. Family ties create expectations, obligations, and future possibilities. Attia understands this world. Ancient sources describe her as intelligent, controlled, and deeply aware of appearances. She raises her son with a sense that public perception matters as much as private ability. This is not sentimentality, it is survival training. Through her, Octavian grows up close enough to Caesar to observe him, but not so close as to be swallowed by his shadow. That distance will later matter. At this stage, Caesar is not a savior figure. He is a powerful relative whose success brings both prestige and danger. Being connected to him opens doors, but it also attracts attention from rivals who remember that Rome eats its rising stars quickly. Roman families do not think about marriage the way modern people do. Marriage is not primarily about affection. It is about alignment. It binds households together, redistributes loyalty, and stabilizes ambition. For families like the Octavii, marriage networks are essential. They create buffers, they create allies, they provide insurance against political storms. Octavian grows up watching these calculations unfold. Who marries whom? Which alliances strengthen a household? Which connections are useful now, and which may matter later? This environment teaches him a lesson that will shape his entire life. Personal desire must always be subordinate to political necessity. Love may exist, but it cannot be trusted to govern decisions. Rome rewards those who can separate feeling from function. This lesson will return again and again as Octavian grows older and begins to use marriage not as a personal choice, but as a political instrument. Despite his advantages, Octavian's early life is not secure. His father dies when he is still very young. The household rearranges itself quickly, as Roman households always do. His mother remarries into a more established senatorial family, gaining stability but also distance. Octavian spends time away from Rome, sent to family estates outside the city, where elite children are often raised during periods of unrest. And this movement away from the capital is common. Rome in the late Republic is noisy, crowded, and unpredictable. Riots happen, violence flares without warning. Wealthy families hedge their risks by keeping children out of the city when possible. Yet absence does not equal safety. Rome's politics reach everywhere. Decisions made in the Senate echo through villas and farms. Even outside the city, Octavian remains aware that his future depends on forces he cannot control. This awareness sharpens him. He learns patience. He learns observation. Rome itself becomes a teacher. It is a place where old men argue about tradition while young men gather followings, where generals return from wars richer and more dangerous than when they left, where public speeches can change careers and rumors can end them. For a boy like Octavian, this environment rewards restraint. He does not grow up believing Rome is fair. He grows up believing Rome is negotiable. Power shifts, alliances change. What matters is timing and presentation. This is not cynicism, it is realism. He learns that birth opens doors, but only preparation keeps them open. He learns that being new is risky, but being invisible can be useful. Most of all, he learns that Rome respects stability more than virtue, even if it pretends otherwise. By the time Octavian reaches adolescence, he occupies a delicate position. He is not an outsider. He is not fully inside the old aristocracy either. He belongs to a rising class in a system that is quietly losing its balance. This combination gives him something rare: access without complacency. He sees how power works before he ever holds it. He understands that Rome's obsession with ancestry masks a deeper fear that the Republic no longer knows how to control the forces it created: armies, wealth, popular support. Octavian does not yet act on these insights. He watches, he listens, he waits. For now, he is simply a young man shaped by bloodlines that are strong enough to matter and new enough to remain anxious. A child of Rome's contradictions, learning that survival in this city depends less on who you are and more on how carefully you move. And Rome, restless and unsure, continues to teach him. Don't give subheadings just one main heading given at the outline. Give part 3. 1,000 words, learning politics before adulthood. In Rome, childhood does not last very long. There is no long pause between learning how to read and learning how to perform. From an early age, boys of the elite are prepared not for privacy but for visibility. They are trained to speak clearly, stand correctly, and control their expressions. Silence is tolerated only if it appears intentional. Emotion is acceptable only if it serves a purpose. Octavian grows up inside this expectation. His education follows the standard path of Rome's upper classes, but the atmosphere around it is anything but ordinary. He learns rhetoric not as decoration but as a tool. Words in Rome do not simply communicate ideas, they create alliances, they provoke crowds, they end careers. From tutors and household elders, he learns how to argue both sides of a question, how to speak with confidence even when uncertain, and how to present restraint as virtue. This training is not abstract, it is reinforced constantly by events unfolding around him. The Republic is restless. Political violence is no longer shocking. Elections are loud, aggressive, and often backed by force. Men do not simply rise through office, they push, bargain, and intimidate. Octavian watches all of this from close range, absorbing lessons without being invited to participate. One of the most formative moments of his youth comes through death. Funerals in Rome are never quiet affairs. They are public rituals staged carefully in front of the city. Bodies are displayed, masks of ancestors are worn, speeches are delivered not to comfort the grieving, but to remind the audience who a family has been and why it deserves continued respect. When Octavian's grandmother Julia dies, he is still very young, yet he delivers her funeral speech himself. This is not a sentimental gesture, it is a calculated one. A boy speaking for a respected woman connected to Julius Caesar sends a message. It places Octavian visibly inside a network of memory and power. It tells Rome that this child understands the language of public life, The crowd listens, they remember. For Octavian, this moment teaches him something essential. Memory can be managed. The past is not fixed. It is shaped through repetition, emphasis, and performance. What Rome remembers becomes truth, and what it forgets fades quickly. This understanding will later become one of his greatest strengths. As he moves through adolescence, Octavian's relationship with Julius Caesar becomes more significant. Caesar is no longer just a distant relative. He is a looming presence in Roman politics, admired by many, feared by others. His successes in Gaul bring wealth, fame, and loyal legions. His enemies warn that he threatens the Republic itself. Octavian watches carefully. He does not idolize Caesar. He studies him. He sees how popularity can protect a man but also isolate him. He notices how Caesar's confidence attracts loyalty while sharpening opposition. Most importantly, he sees how power, once gathered, creates expectations that are difficult to escape. This observation shapes Octavian's instincts long before he ever acts. Meanwhile, Rome continues to teach him about danger. The city is overcrowded. Grain shortages cause unrest. Fires spread easily through tightly packed neighborhoods. Armed gangs appear during elections. Political debates are no longer settled by persuasion alone. They spill into the streets. Octavian's family, like many elite households, moves him in and out of the city during these years. Time is spent at estates outside Rome, places that offer physical safety but no real distance from political reality. News travels fast, rumors travel faster. Decisions made in the Senate ripple outward into every corner of Italy. This movement teaches Octavian flexibility. He learns not to attach himself too strongly to any single place. Power, he begins to understand, is portable. Influence moves with people, money, and loyalty, not walls. By his mid-teens, Octavian is already participating in public life in small but meaningful ways. He is enrolled among Rome's religious colleges, institutions that blend ritual with politics. These roles are not ceremonial in the modern sense. They grant visibility, legitimacy, and early access to networks of influence. Religion in Rome is not separate from governance, it reinforces it. By taking part in these institutions, Octavian places himself inside Rome's symbolic machinery. He becomes familiar to the public eye. His name circulates, his face is recognized. None of this feels dramatic at the time. It is incremental, almost quiet, but it matters. He also begins to show a desire to prove himself in ways expected of Roman men. Military service is still the most direct path to honor. Octavian expresses interest in joining Caesar on campaign. His mother hesitates. He is young, physically unimposing, and not yet ready for the dangers of war. This refusal frustrates him, but it also protects him. While others his age rush toward glory, Octavian remains in observation mode. He studies politics before testing himself in battle. He learns how Rome rewards success and punishes overreach. He sees how reputations are built slowly but destroyed quickly. This period of waiting sharpens his patience. Rome does not reward impatience, even when it pretends to admire boldness. Octavian begins to understand that timing is everything. A move made too early invites resistance. A move made too late invites irrelevance. By the time he is allowed to accompany Caesar toward the end of the civil conflicts, he is no longer simply a boy seeking approval. He is a young man trained in restraint, aware of optics, and sensitive to how power appears from the outside. Caesar notices him. Ancient sources suggest that Caesar sees something unusual in Octavian. Not brilliance in battle, not charisma in crowds, something else: control, awareness, the ability to listen longer than others speak. This quiet competence leaves an impression. Caesar later alters his will to adopt Octavian and name him his primary heir. It shocks many in Rome. Octavian is young. He is inexperienced. He is not the obvious choice. Yet adoption in Rome is not about blood. It is about continuity. It is about selecting someone who can carry a name without breaking it. In choosing Octavian, Caesar may have believed he was choosing safety. Octavian does not yet know this. He is still learning, still observing, still absorbing lessons Rome offers without mercy. He has not held power, he has not commanded armies, but he understands something many older men have forgotten. In Rome, survival belongs not to the loudest voice, but to the one who understands the room, and Octavian understands it very well. Part 4, 1000 words, Generals who taught Rome. How to fear itself. Rome likes to tell stories about courage, discipline, and shared sacrifice. But when Octavian is growing up, the stories people whisper are darker. They speak of generals who turn their armies inward, of citizens who learned that law could be suspended with a single vote, of lists posted in public spaces, naming men who could be killed without consequence. These stories all lead back to two names, Gaius Marius and Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Their struggle happened before Octavian was born, yet it defines the world he inherits. Marius, a man from outside the old aristocracy, had risen through military success and popular support. Sulla, an aristocrat by birth, answered him with equal force. What followed was not simply rivalry, but transformation. Rome learned that soldiers could march on their own city, that loyalty to commanders could outweigh loyalty to the Republic itself. When Sulla emerged victorious, he did something unprecedented. He made violence official. As dictator, he issued prescriptions, lists of enemies of the state. Property was seized, families were ruined, men were hunted not for crimes, but for politics. Sulla eventually resigned his position and retired, claiming he had restored the Republic. But the damage was done. Rome had seen that absolute power could be taken, used, and abandoned without consequence. The lesson lingered. Octavian grows up in a city that pretends this was an exception. Yet no one truly believes it. The Constitution still exists, but trust in it has been shaken. The Senate still debates, but its authority feels fragile. Everyone knows that the next crisis will not be solved with speeches alone. This awareness shapes how Romans think about generals. Victories abroad are no longer celebrated without hesitation. Every successful commander returns with something dangerous: loyal troops. Armies that have marched together, fought together, and depended on their general for pay and survival do not dissolve easily back into civilian life. They expect rewards, they expect protection, and they remember who provided it. Octavian watches this dynamic take hold again and again. He sees how military success creates political gravity, how men who command legions begin to speak differently, act differently, how the city adjusts itself around them, sometimes eagerly, sometimes fearfully. Rome begins to understand that the Republic's greatest strength, its armies, has become its greatest vulnerability. This realization breeds anxiety. Political debate grows sharper. Accusations of tyranny become common. Every ambitious man is suspected of wanting what Sulla once held. Even reforms are interpreted as power grabs. The Republic's language remains, but its spirit is brittle. For a young Octavian, this environment is instructive. He learns that power is not just about control, but about memory. Sulla's shadow still hangs over Rome. Men remember the terror, the confiscations, the unpredictability. They fear a return to it, yet they also know it worked. It ended conflict quickly. It imposed order brutally. Rome is caught between dread and temptation. This contradiction creates a strange atmosphere. On the surface, Romans praise liberty. Beneath that, they crave stability. They want peace, but they fear the price it might demand. They remember Sulla with horror, yet they also remember that chaos stopped when he took charge. Octavian absorbs this tension quietly. He does not grow up believing the Republic is sacred. He grows up understanding it is fragile. He learns that legality can be suspended if enough people feel threatened. He sees that fear, once unleashed, reshapes what citizens are willing to accept. Violence becomes precedent. Every political crisis is now measured against past bloodshed. Men argue not about whether force should be used, but when. The idea that the system can correct itself peacefully begins to feel naive. Rome is still powerful, still expanding, but internally it feels brittle, stretched thin by its own success. As Octavian moves closer to adulthood, this climate becomes more intense. The first triumvirate forms, an informal understanding between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. It exists not because the constitution requires it, but because the constitution cannot restrain them. Power is no longer centralized in institutions. It is distributed among personalities, each backed by wealth, armies, and reputation. This arrangement keeps the peace for a time, but it also confirms what many already suspect. Rome is now governed by balance between strong men, not by shared rules. Octavian watches Caesar in this environment and learns another lesson. Caesar does not hide his ambition, but he frames it carefully. He claims to act for the people, for Rome's glory, for stability. His enemies accuse him of tyranny. Both sides speak the language of the Republic, even as they stretch it beyond recognition. This duplicity becomes normal. Octavian begins to understand that Rome does not fall because people abandon its ideals. It falls because everyone claims to defend them while bending them to breaking point. The system does not collapse overnight. It erodes through repetition, exception after exception, justified by crisis. For a boy paying attention, this is a powerful education. He learns that fear is contagious, that once a population has lived through terror, it will accept measures it once rejected. He also learns that stepping into power openly invites resistance. Sulla had seized authority directly and paid for it with lasting infamy despite his claims of restoration. That lesson lodges itself firmly. Octavian sees that Rome does not want another Sulla. It wants safety without remembering how it was achieved. It wants order without admitting that it has surrendered something in exchange. This understanding shapes his instincts long before he has the means to act. By the time Octavian stands on the edge of adulthood, Rome is no longer simply unstable. It is prepared to accept something new as long as it does not look like what came before. Prepared to trade participation for peace if the trade is offered gently enough. The generals before him have shown him what not to do. They have taught Rome how to fear itself. And Octavian, still young, still watching, begins to consider how power might be taken without waking that fear again. Julius Caesar and the fatal shape of power. By the time Octavian reaches his late teens, one man dominates Rome's imagination. Julius Caesar is no longer simply a senator or general. He has become a force that bends the Republic around him. His victories in Gaul have brought wealth beyond counting, soldiers bound to him by years of shared hardship, and a reputation that stretches far beyond Italy. For many Romans, Caesar feels inevitable. For others, he feels unbearable. Octavian watches all of this from a careful distance. He sees how Caesar moves through Rome differently than other men. Confidence surrounds him like armor. Crowds listen when he speaks. Enemies hesitate before opposing him. Yet beneath this authority lies something fragile. Caesar's power depends on momentum, on never appearing uncertain, on always moving forward. This is not the power of tradition. It is the power of presence. Caesar's campaigns in Gaul are celebrated publicly as triumphs for Rome, but privately, They unsettled the political class. Each victory extends the frontier. Each victory also deepens Caesar's bond with his legions. The Senate approves commands reluctantly, then anxiously counts the years. Temporary authority begins to feel permanent. Octavian learns an early lesson here. Armies remember who feeds them. In Rome, soldiers are citizens, but they are also voters in a different sense. Their loyalty is personal. They follow men who pay them, reward them, and protect their futures. Caesar understands this perfectly. He distributes wealth generously. He promises land. He ensures his troops know who their prosperity depends on. The Republic, with its rotating offices and slow procedures, cannot compete with that clarity. As Caesar's term in Gaul nears its end, tension rises. The Senate demands he return without his army. Caesar knows what that means. Without his legions, he becomes vulnerable, exposed to prosecution, to political retaliation, to the fate of many men who had climbed too high without permanent protection. The standoff is not about law alone, it is about survival. When Caesar crosses the Rubicon with his army, he breaks a rule that had once been sacred. No general was permitted to bring troops into Italy. The rule existed to protect the Republic from its own defenders. Caesar crosses anyway. Rome does not erupt in immediate violence. Instead, it freezes. Many senators flee. Pompey withdraws. The city does not resist. This absence of resistance teaches Octavian something chilling. The Republic does not fall with noise. It falls when no one believes it can be defended. The civil war that follows confirms what many already fear. Caesar's forces are disciplined, loyal, and confident. His enemies are divided. Battles are fought not just with weapons, but with perception. Caesar presents himself as restrained, reasonable, forced into action. His opponents struggle to maintain a coherent story. Octavian watches how carefully Caesar controls his image. Even as he accumulates extraordinary authority, Caesar refuses certain symbols. He declines the title of king. He allows traditional offices to continue, at least in appearance. He accepts the role of dictator, but frames it as a temporary necessity rooted in Roman precedent. Yet time passes, and the necessity does not end. Here lies the fatal shape of Caesar's power. He operates within the system while hollowing it out. He keeps the language of the Republic alive while removing its teeth. This strategy protects him from immediate backlash, but it also creates anxiety. People begin to wonder if there will ever be a return to normal limits. Octavian absorbs this tension deeply. He notices that Caesar's mistake is not ambition itself. Rome has always rewarded ambition. The mistake lies in certainty. Caesar appears too confident, too settled in his position. His reluctance to relinquish power makes others imagine a future where they have no place. Fear replaces admiration. The Senate, already weakened by years of compromise, begins to panic. Some members convince themselves they are defending liberty. Others simply fear being sidelined forever. The conspiracy that forms is not unified by ideology. It is united by dread. Octavian is not present when Caesar is killed. He is elsewhere, training, preparing, learning the expectations of Roman manhood. Yet the shock reaches him quickly. The news is not just that Caesar is dead, but that Rome has once again chosen violence as a solution. The assassination is chaotic. There is no clean restoration of order, no clear successor. The killers expect applause. They receive confusion and anger. Crowds do not rally to the Senate. Instead, they grieve Caesar. This reaction reveals another critical lesson. Popularity can outlive power. Caesar's enemies have misjudged Rome's mood. They believed fear of monarchy would outweigh attachment to the man. They were wrong. The Republic they hoped to revive no longer exists in the hearts of the people. For Octavian, this moment clarifies everything. He sees that Caesar did not fail because he crossed the Rubicon or accepted dictatorship. He failed because he allowed power to look permanent. He allowed others to believe there was no path back for them. Rome, Octavian realizes, can accept almost anything except exclusion. This insight lodges itself firmly in his mind. When Octavian later takes Caesar's name, it will not be out of sentiment, it will be out of calculation. He understands that Caesar's legacy is both a weapon and a warning. To wield it successfully, one must learn from the way Caesar fell. Power, Octavian now knows, must be disguised as service. Authority must look borrowed, not seized. Control must be layered, distributed, and always presented as temporary, even when it is not. Caesar's life teaches him how to rise. Caesar's death teaches him how not to fall. And Rome, standing uncertain in the aftermath, waits without realizing that the most attentive student of this moment has not yet spoken. The Ides of March and the collapse of illusion. The morning Caesar dies does not feel dramatic. There are no thunderclaps, no final speeches meant for history. Rome wakes, as it always does, noisy, crowded, impatient. Senators walk toward the Curia believing they are attending another routine session. Caesar arrives without armor, without a guard strong enough to matter. He believes the danger has passed, or perhaps he believes that his position makes danger impossible. That belief lasts only moments. The attack is confused and clumsy. Blades strike from too many directions at once. Some wounds are shallow, others are fatal. Ancient accounts agree on one thing: there is no heroic resistance, no theatrical defiance. Caesar collapses beneath the weight of surprise as much as steel. When it is over, the Senate chamber smells of blood, and the Republic does not return. The men who planned the killing imagine themselves as restorers. They believe that removing Caesar will reset the system, that Rome will step backward into a familiar shape. They underestimate how much the city has changed and how little faith remains in institutions alone. Outside, there is no celebration. Crowds do not cheer the assassins. Soldiers do not rally to the Senate. Instead, confusion spreads. Shops close early. Rumors race through the streets. People ask the same question again and again: what happens now? This moment teaches Octavian something crucial even before he arrives in Rome. Power, once concentrated, does not evaporate when the person holding it dies. It leaves behind a vacuum, and vacuums pull violently. The men who kill Caesar have removed a figure, not a system. They have created uncertainty without offering an alternative that feels safe. Octavian is not in the city when the assassination occurs. He is in Illyria, preparing for a future that until this moment seemed uncertain but manageable. The news reaches him quickly, carried by messengers and amplified by rumor. Caesar is dead. Rome is unstable. And Octavian's name now appears inside a dangerous sentence: Heir. At first, the situation looks impossible. Octavian is young. He has no army. He holds no office that truly matters. Older men surround him, each with experience, followers, and ambition. Mark Antony controls Caesar's papers and treasury. The Senate is divided. Veterans wait to see who will protect their interests. Yet beneath the chaos lies an opportunity few others recognize. Caesar's will names Octavian as his adopted son. In Roman law, adoption is not symbolic, it rewrites identity. Octavian does not merely inherit property, he inherits status, obligations, and a name that carries enormous emotional weight. From this moment forward, he is legally Gaius Julius Caesar. This decision forces a choice. Octavian can reject the inheritance and live safely as a wealthy young aristocrat, or he can accept the name and everything that comes with it: expectation, danger, and the unresolved loyalty of thousands of soldiers who loved the man now gone. He chooses the name. This is not a youthful impulse, it is a calculated act. Octavian understands that Caesar's name has become larger than Caesar himself. It represents victory, generosity, and defiance of a Senate many Romans no longer trust. By taking it, Octavian positions himself as continuity rather than rupture. The move is risky but precise. When he arrives in Rome, he does not announce himself as a ruler. He presents himself as a dutiful son. He speaks of honoring Caesar's legacy. He promises to fulfill Caesar's commitments, especially to the veterans who expect payment and land. Money becomes his first weapon. Caesar had amassed enormous resources for future campaigns. Octavian accesses these funds and uses them strategically. He pays soldiers others have neglected. He rewards loyalty quickly. He understands that gratitude creates allegiance faster than ideology ever could. Mark Antony underestimates him. Antony sees Octavian as a boy borrowing a famous name. He assumes age and experience will decide the contest. Octavian allows this assumption to stand. Youth, once again, becomes camouflage. Meanwhile, the assassins miscalculate repeatedly. They believe they can frame the killing as a patriotic act. Instead, Antony's speech at Caesar's funeral shifts public mood sharply. Caesar's body is displayed, his wounds are named, his generosity is reminded. The crowd turns angry, the killers flee. The republic they hoped to restore now feels farther away than ever. Octavian watches how narrative shapes events. He sees that Antony controls the stage in the moment, but not the future. Antony speaks loudly, but Octavian organizes quietly. He builds relationships, he gathers supporters, he learns who feels threatened by Antony's dominance and offers them an alternative that feels safer. Rome fractures again, but differently this time. Instead of two clear sides, multiple factions form, each claiming to act in Caesar's name or against it. Octavian presents himself as respectful, restrained, and lawful. He insists he seeks recognition, not domination, yet behind this posture, he consolidates power carefully. The illusion of republican restoration collapses completely. The Senate cannot command loyalty, laws cannot restrain armed men. What remains is negotiation backed by force. Octavian adapts quickly to this reality, not by rejecting it, but by mastering it. He accepts offices at unusual ages. He bends procedure without openly breaking it. Each step is justified as necessary, temporary, and legal enough to avoid panic. This is the lesson Caesar never learned. Octavian understands that Rome does not fear power itself, it fears losing relevance. By allowing others to believe they still matter, he reduces resistance. He never claims everything at once. He allows rivals to exhaust themselves while he builds endurance. The boy becomes a player, not through brilliance in battle, not through fiery speeches, but through patience and precision. He watches how Rome reacts to disorder and learns when to step forward and when to retreat. By the end of this period, one thing is clear. The Republic is not returning. Too much blood has been spilled. Too many exceptions have been made. Too many citizens have learned that stability often arrives wearing unfamiliar clothes. Octavian does not mourn this openly. He does not celebrate it either. He adapts. The Ides of March have shattered an illusion that could not survive. What replaces it will not announce itself as something new. It will arrive quietly, shaped by lessons learned in fear, betrayal, and ambition. And Octavian, still young, now understands that Rome no longer needs a savior who shouts. It needs someone who listens, waits, and never allows power to look like it has finished moving. Money, soldiers, and the education of a predator. Rome does not decide its future in the Senate alone. It decides it where money moves and soldiers listen. Octavian understands this earlier than most men twice his age. In the months after Caesar's death, Rome becomes a marketplace of loyalty. Veterans wait for payment promised long ago. Senators hedge their positions, careful not to choose the losing side too soon. Commanders watch one another, measuring strength not only in numbers, but in momentum. Law still exists, but it has become negotiable. Octavian steps into this environment without illusion. He has no famous victories to boast of, no commanding presence to intimidate rivals. What he has instead is access to Caesar's wealth and a clear understanding of how Rome now works. Soldiers do not fight for constitutions. They fight for men who remember their names, settle their accounts, and protect their futures. Octavian begins by doing something deceptively simple. He pays them. Using funds Caesar had gathered for future campaigns, Octavian distributes donatives to veterans who feel forgotten. He does not lecture them about loyalty to the Republic. He thanks them for loyalty to Caesar and presents himself as the one person willing to honor unfinished promises. This is not charity, it is investment. The effect is immediate. Men who had once marched under Caesar now begin to speak Octavian's name with interest, not devotion yet, but curiosity. He is young, but he is reliable. He may lack experience, but he delivers results. In a Rome exhausted by uncertainty, reliability matters. Mark Antony notices too late. Antony controls Caesar's official papers and public position, but Octavian controls something more flexible: expectation. Veterans begin to compare the two men quietly. One speaks loudly and delays payment. The other speaks carefully and pays immediately. Rome's soldiers understand this difference perfectly. Octavian does not challenge Antony directly. He avoids open confrontation, knowing it would expose his weakness. Instead, he works sideways. He recruits allies among senators who fear Antony's dominance. He presents himself as a counterweight, not a threat. To men who worry Rome is drifting toward another dictatorship, Octavian looks manageable. This perception is crucial. Youth becomes his shield. He allows others to believe they can control him. He accepts guidance publicly while making decisions privately. Every concession he appears to make buys him time. At the same time, he begins assembling his own forces, not through grand declarations, but through steady accumulation. Small groups of veterans, local supporters, men who feel overlooked by Antony's circle. Each addition strengthens him quietly. By the time Rome realizes what is happening, Octavian already commands loyalty that does not depend on office. The Republic's procedures strain to contain him. Normally, advancement follows a clear sequence. Offices are held at set ages. Experience precedes authority. Octavian disrupts this rhythm. He accepts honors early. He votes in the Senate without having held traditional posts. Each exception is justified as necessary under extraordinary circumstances. Extraordinary circumstances have become routine. Rome accepts these deviations because it no longer believes normality will return. The system bends because it fears snapping. Octavian takes advantage of this flexibility without appearing to exploit it. Then comes the moment that defines his transformation. In 43 BC, Octavian marches on Rome with legions. This act would once have been unthinkable. It would have ended a man's career instantly. Yet Rome barely resists. The city has seen this before. Soldiers on Italian soil no longer shock the population. What shocks them now is the absence of alternatives. Octavian does not sack the city. He does not terrorize the Senate. He demands legitimacy. He is made consul at an age that defies tradition. 19 years old, holding the highest office in the Republic. The appointment feels wrong, yet unavoidable. The Senate complies not because it approves, but because it sees no safer option. This is the education of a predator, and Octavian learns quickly. He discovers that force and legality can coexist if arranged carefully. That appearing reluctant reduces resistance. That Rome prefers stability even when it arrives through irregular means. Shortly afterward, the second triumvirate is formed. Unlike the earlier agreement between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, this is not informal. It is legalized, sanctioned by law. Extraordinary powers are granted openly to Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus. Rome admits what it has been doing quietly for years, concentrating power in a few hands to prevent chaos. The cost is immediate and brutal. Prescriptions return, lists are drawn, enemies are named, property is seized. Lives are ended not by trial, but by designation. The terror of Sulla's time resurfaces, this time justified as a temporary necessity. Funds flow into the coffers of the triumvirs, financing armies and rewarding supporters. Octavian participates. This is important to acknowledge. He is not a passive observer. He signs orders. He benefits from confiscations. He allows fear to do work that persuasion cannot. The young man who once watched violence from the margins now uses it deliberately, yet even here his style differs. He is less theatrical than Antony, less openly cruel. He allows others to take blame while he preserves an image of restraint. This division of roles is intentional. It protects him later when Rome begins to tire of bloodshed again. The campaign against Caesar's assassins culminates at Philippi. The battle itself is chaotic and costly. Victory is secured, but not cleanly. Brutus and Cassius die by their own hands, choosing death over capture. Their forces surrender. Republican resistance collapses, not with a final speech, but with exhaustion. After Philippi, something shifts inside Rome. The cause of restoration loses credibility. The language of liberty sounds hollow after years of war. People stop asking who is right and begin asking who can end it. Octavian senses this change. He understands that the Republic has reached a psychological limit. It cannot absorb more uncertainty. It cannot survive endless competition between armed men. Rome is ready for control as long as it does not feel like surrender. The predator has learned his environment. He knows when to show strength and when to hide it, when to spend money and when to conserve it, when to let others speak and when to remain silent. Each decision sharpens him further. By the end of this phase, Octavian is no longer simply Caesar's heir. He is a power in his own right, not because he demands it, but because Rome, exhausted and afraid, begins to rely on him. And once reliance sets in, authority is never far behind. The second triumvirate and legalized terror. When power becomes unstable, Rome does something it has done before. It suspends its own rules and pretends the suspension is temporary. By late 43 BC, the Republic is no longer governed by debate. It is governed by urgency. Caesar is dead. His killers are still alive. Armies stand idle, waiting to be pointed somewhere. The Senate fears Antony, mistrusts Octavian, and knows it cannot restrain either without force it no longer controls. So Rome chooses the familiar escape. It legalizes exception. The second triumvirate is created not as an agreement between friends, but as a mechanism of survival. Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus are granted extraordinary powers by law, not influence, not advice, authority. They are allowed to override magistrates, bypass courts, raise armies, and make decisions that would once have shattered the constitution. This is not done in secret. It is announced openly. The Republic admits it cannot function as designed. For Octavian, this moment confirms everything he has learned. Rome does not collapse when laws are broken. It collapses when laws can no longer contain fear. Once that threshold is crossed, people accept almost anything, provided it promises an end to uncertainty. The triumvirate's first act is also its most revealing. They begin the prescriptions. Once again, lists appear. Names of citizens marked for death, property confiscated, families ruined overnight. Old rivalries are settled under the cover of legality. Revenge disguises itself as necessity. Wealth flows into the hands of the triumvirs. funding their armies and rewarding loyalty. The city remembers Sulla. The memory of terror resurfaces with sharp clarity. People hide valuables, friendships become dangerous, silence becomes a form of self-defense. Rome does not rebel, not because it approves, but because it recognizes the pattern. Resistance now would only produce more names on the lists. Octavian participates fully. This matters. He does not stand aside as a cleaner alternative. He authorizes killings. He benefits from seizures. The boy who once observed violence as precedent now uses it as policy. Yet even here, he is careful. He avoids unnecessary cruelty. He allows Antony to appear more excessive. He lets Lepidus fade into the background. Octavian's role becomes administrative, almost procedural. He signs orders without spectacle. He presents himself as doing what must be done, not what he enjoys. This distinction will matter later. Rome begins to associate bloodshed with the period of emergency, not with Octavian personally. He understands the value of this separation. Terror is useful, but it must not cling to you forever. With the prescriptions complete, the triumvirate turns outward. The assassins of Caesar still control territories in the eastern Mediterranean. Brutus and Cassius command armies. They frame themselves as defenders of the Republic, but their message struggles to resonate. Too much has happened. Too much blood has already been spilled. When Octavian and Antony march east, they do so not as liberators, but as avengers. The confrontation comes at Philippi. The battle is not a clean clash of ideals. It is a collision of exhaustion. Armies fight because they have nowhere else to go. Victory comes at terrible cost. The fighting stretches across days. Momentum shifts. Morale breaks. In the end, Brutus and Cassius both choose death over capture. Their suicides matter psychologically. Rome does not see martyrs. It sees closure. The cause of Republican restoration loses its final leaders. The idea that the old system can be revived through force collapses with them. People stop asking when the Republic will return and begin adjusting to the reality in front of them. After Philippi, the triumvirate reshapes itself. Lepidus is sidelined, gradually stripped of influence without open confrontation. He is allowed dignity in exchange for irrelevance. Octavian and Antony divide the Roman world between them, west and east, Italy and provinces, Rome and Alexandria. The Republic is now a map of influence, not a shared project. Octavian takes control of the west. Italy, Gaul, Spain and Africa fall under his supervision. This places him close to Rome's heart, its grain supply, its veterans, its population. Antony governs the east, richer in tradition and wealth, but farther from the city's daily anxieties. This division is practical but unstable. It requires trust between men who do not trust easily. It relies on distance to prevent friction. For a time, it works. The city rests, war pauses, trade resumes. Rome breathes again, cautiously. Octavian uses this pause carefully. He focuses on Italy, on settling veterans, on ensuring grain reaches the city, on presenting himself as the man who keeps Rome functioning while others pursue glory elsewhere. He understands that people forgive much if they are fed and protected. Antony, meanwhile, drifts eastward. His alliance with Cleopatra becomes more visible. His court grows more theatrical. His decisions appear less Roman. This contrast begins to work in Octavian's favor without him having to provoke it directly. Rome watches, Rome compares. So the second triumvirate had been sold as temporary. Yet years pass and it remains. This does not cause outrage, it causes fatigue. People stop asking when normality will return and begin asking which of the triumvirs feels least dangerous. Octavian positions himself deliberately. He attends to procedure. He speaks respectfully of tradition. He avoids excessive display. He He presents Rome as his home, not a stepping stone. In doing so, he allows Antony to appear distant, distracted, and foreign without openly accusing him. This is power exercised through contrast, not confrontation. By the time the triumvirate begins to fracture, the outcome is no longer uncertain. Rome has learned to associate Octavian with order and Antony with excess. This association is not entirely fair, but fairness is no longer the currency of politics. Fear is. And Octavian has learned how to direct it without becoming its face. The legalized terror of the triumvirate achieves its goal. Resistance collapses, rivals are eliminated. The Republic's last illusions of self-correction fade quietly. In their place stands a new expectation that someone, somewhere, will prevent chaos from returning. Octavian understands that expectation perfectly. He did not create it, he inherited it, and soon he will decide what shape it takes. Actium and the war that became a story. By the time Rome moves toward its final civil war, most people no longer believe it is about policy or principle. It is about who feels Roman and who does not. That distinction matters more than armies. Octavian understands this before a single ship sails. He knows that the next conflict will not be decided only by steel or numbers, but by how the war is explained while it is still unfolding. In Rome, perception does not follow victory. It prepares it. Mark Antony has not lost power yet. He still commands enormous resources. His armies in the east are experienced and loyal. His alliance with Cleopatra brings wealth, ships, and access to grain. On paper, he is the stronger man. But Rome is not paper. Antony's choices begin to trouble the city. He spends more time in Alexandria than in Italy. He conducts ceremonies that look unfamiliar to Roman eyes. He distributes eastern territories to Cleopatra's children in ways that feel symbolic, even if they are strategically calculated. Each action feeds unease back in Rome. Octavian does not rush to exploit this. He waits, allowing discomfort to grow naturally. When he speaks, he frames the conflict carefully. And this is not a war against Antony, he suggests. It is a war against a foreign threat that has captured a Roman leader. The language is subtle, but effective. Rome has always feared kings, and it fears foreign monarchies even more. Cleopatra becomes the symbol, not the woman herself, but what she represents. Egypt's wealth, its ancient traditions, its divine rulers. Rome imagines a future where power flows eastward, where senators become courtiers, where the Republic's memory dissolves into ceremony. Octavian feeds this fear without exaggeration. He emphasizes Antony's absence, his disregard for Roman customs, his will, which allegedly favors burial in Alexandria. Whether every detail is accurate matters less than how it feels. Rome does not demand proof when anxiety already exists. The Senate reacts. Antony's powers are revoked. War is declared not against him directly, but against Cleopatra. This distinction is important. It allows Roman senators who still support Antony to save face while aligning with the city's emotional center. It frames the conflict as defensive rather than fratricidal. Octavian wins before the first engagement. As armies mobilize, the Mediterranean becomes the true battlefield. This war will be decided by ships, not legions. Supply lines matter more than formations. Grain routes, harbors, and winds shape outcomes as much as commanders. Here, Octavian's greatest advantage reveals itself. Agrippa. Marcus Agrippa does not seek attention. He does not cultivate spectacle. He studies logistics, naval construction, and movement. He modernizes fleets. He trains crews. He understands that control of the sea means control of survival. Antony's fleet is impressive, but unwieldy. Large ships, heavy with armor and men, dominate on open water, but struggle with maneuverability. Octavian's ships are smaller, faster, and better coordinated. Agrippa uses speed as a weapon. He cuts supply routes. He forces Antony's forces into defensive positions. Disease spreads in Antony's camps. Morale erodes. Desertions increase. Still, the final confrontation cannot be avoided. It comes near Actium, at the mouth of the Ambracian Gulf. Antony attempts to break out with his fleet, hoping to escape encirclement and reposition. Octavian's forces block the exit. The sea becomes crowded, chaotic, tense. The battle itself is not cinematic. Ships ram and burn, smoke fills the air, communication breaks down, confusion spreads faster than orders. Cleopatra's squadron withdraws early. Whether by plan or panic remains debated. Antony follows her, abandoning much of his fleet. This moment defines the story. Octavian frames it as betrayal, as abandonment, as proof that Antony has chosen the East over Rome. Whether this interpretation is fair matters little. The image settles quickly. A Roman commander fleeing with an Egyptian queen while his men burn behind him. The war is effectively over. Octavian does not chase recklessly. He consolidates. He allows time and hunger to finish what battle began. When he eventually moves on Egypt, resistance is minimal. Antony, defeated and isolated, takes his own life. Cleopatra follows, choosing death over humiliation. Octavian enters Alexandria as a conqueror, but behaves carefully. He spares the city. He respects its institutions. He seizes its treasury. Egypt is annexed not as a normal province, but as a personal possession. Its grain feeds Rome. Its wealth stabilizes the state. Its independence ends without ceremony. Back in Rome, the story crystallizes. Actium becomes a victory for Roman values, a defense of tradition, a rejection of foreign monarchy. Octavian allows poets, historians, and monuments to reinforce this version. The complexity of the conflict fades. What remains is clarity. Rome has been saved. This narrative is powerful because it simplifies trauma. Years of civil war compress into a single moment of triumph. People accept the story because it offers relief. It explains suffering as necessary and purposeful. Octavian understands that stories heal faster than reforms. He does not declare himself ruler. He does not announce a new order. He allows Rome to celebrate peace, then gradually adjusts the structure beneath it. The city is grateful. Gratitude becomes trust. Actium is remembered not for its tactics, but for what it allowed: an end to war, an end to fear, an end to choosing sides. Octavian emerges not as a conqueror of Romans, but as the man who spared them further conflict. This distinction matters deeply in a society exhausted by violence. The war that began as a contest of power becomes a myth of restoration. And Octavian, now the only man left standing, prepares to do what Caesar never could. He will change Rome without forcing it to admit that change has occurred. Ending the Republic. Without saying goodbye. When Octavian returns to Rome after Actium, there is no announcement of a new age, no crown, no throne, no declaration that the Republic is finished. That silence is intentional. Rome is tired, not triumphant, not inspired, tired. Decades of civil war have taught its people to distrust dramatic change. Octavian understands this instinctively. The lesson of Caesar's death is never far from his mind. Power that names itself too boldly invites resistance. So Octavian does something that looks almost humble. He gives power back. At least that is how it is presented. In public, he stands before the Senate and announces that extraordinary authority granted during emergency is no longer necessary. The wars are over. The Republic can breathe again. He offers to return control of the state to its traditional institutions. The gesture shocks Rome. No one expected this. Senators are uneasy. They remember Sulla. They remember Caesar. They wait for the trap. but nothing happens. Octavian does not seize the moment. He pauses. And in that pause, Rome decides for itself. The Senate responds not with rejection but with reward. They insist that Octavian retain authority over key provinces. They argue that stability requires continuity. They frame the arrangement as cooperation rather than command. Octavian accepts reluctantly. This reluctance is critical. It reassures Rome that he is not driven by naked ambition. He appears to yield to necessity rather than desire. In doing so, he allows others to believe they are still choosing their future. The new structure takes shape quietly. Octavian does not rule everything. Provinces are divided. Some are governed by senators, others by Octavian's appointees. The distinction matters. It allows the Senate to feel relevant while ensuring that Octavian controls the regions where legions are stationed. Power is no longer concentrated in one visible office. Instead, it is layered. Octavian holds imperium over key territories, giving him military authority where it counts. He possesses tribunician power, allowing him to propose laws, veto decisions, and present himself as a protector of the people. He accumulates auctoritas, a form of influence that relies on reputation rather than command. No single title defines him. That is the point. Rome cannot point to the moment it becomes an empire because no single moment exists. The transformation is procedural, not dramatic. Old offices remain, elections continue, the Senate meets as it always has, yet every crucial decision passes through one man. Octavian takes a new name. The Senate calls him Augustus. It is not a political title in the traditional sense. It carries religious and moral weight rather than legal dominance. It suggests reverence, not rule. By accepting it, Octavian steps into a role that feels elevated without being overtly monarchical. He also embraces another label, princeps, first citizen, not king, not dictator, first among equals. The phrase reassures Rome that hierarchy still exists but has not become absolute. Augustus sits at the center, not above it. At least that is how it appears. In practice, the balance has shifted permanently. Augustus controls appointments. He influences legislation. He commands loyalty through patronage rather than fear. He does not need to issue orders loudly. People anticipate his preferences and act accordingly. This is governance through expectation. Rome adjusts quickly. Markets stabilize. Grain arrives reliably. Veterans receive land. Roads are repaired. Crime decreases. For ordinary citizens, these changes matter more than constitutional theory. Life feels safer, predictable, less volatile. Peace becomes persuasive. Few people mourn the Republic openly anymore. What they miss is not participation but security. Augustus provides that. He understands that stability, once experienced, rewrites political desire. The Senate adapts as well. Some resent the change, others thrive within it. Advancement now depends on proximity to Augustus rather than factional maneuvering. For many, this feels like relief. The risks of politics decrease. Careers become safer, if less independent. Augustus does not punish dissent aggressively. He allows disagreement within limits. He tolerates debate that does not threaten the structure he has built. By doing so, he reinforces the illusion that Rome still governs itself. That illusion is powerful. It allows Romans to believe continuity has been preserved even as reality shifts beneath them. The Republic's vocabulary remains intact, but its meaning has changed. Offices exist, but their autonomy has narrowed. Rome has traded uncertainty for order. Augustus never forces the city to admit this trade openly. He never frames it as loss. Instead, he frames it as restoration. The Republic, he implies, has been rescued from excess and returned to balance. Many accept this interpretation willingly. Others accept it because the alternative feels worse. By the time this arrangement settles, resistance feels impractical. There is no clear enemy to oppose, no decree to overturn, no single act to condemn. The change has occurred gradually, almost gently. This is Augustus's greatest achievement. He ends the Republic without destroying it. He leaves its shell intact, polished, respected. Inside, a new system operates, one built on personal authority, legal precision, and careful restraint. It does not announce itself as permanent, it simply endures. And Rome, having survived chaos, chooses not to look too closely. The Republic does not die in a single moment. It fades willingly into something quieter. And Augustus ensures that no one feels the need to say goodbye. Governing peace, managing control. Peace once achieved is fragile. Augustus understands this better than anyone alive. Winning wars had been difficult, but governing the silence afterward is harder. Rome has known victory before. What it has not known is long stability without rivalry tearing it apart. Peace must be organized, maintained, and quietly enforced. So Augustus turns from conquest to systems. He does not rule by spectacle. He rules by making daily life predictable. Fires had once devoured entire neighborhoods without response. Crime had flourished in the shadows of overcrowding. Grain shortages had triggered riots. Augustus treats these not as inconveniences, but as threats to legitimacy. He begins in the streets. Rome receives organized fire brigades and night watches. The city is divided into districts with responsibility clearly assigned. Disorder no longer drifts without consequence. For ordinary Romans, this change is immediate and tangible. The city feels safer after dark. Fires are contained. Violence declines. This is not generosity, it is strategy. A population that feels protected is less likely to question authority. Augustus then addresses the empire beyond the city. He restructures provincial governance carefully. Territories are divided into two categories. Some remain under senatorial administration, largely peaceful regions without legions. Others, where armies are stationed, fall under Augustus's direct oversight. The logic is precise. Military power answers to one center, not many. This prevents rivals from forming quietly. At the same time, it allows senators to feel involved in governance. They still govern provinces, they still hold office, they still matter. Within boundaries, Augustus controls. Taxation follows. For generations, Rome had relied heavily on conquest to fund itself. Loot, tribute, and confiscation had replaced planning. Augustus changes this. He formalizes taxation. Land and trade produce steady revenue. The empire begins to function as a state rather than a campaign machine. This shift stabilizes everything else. Armies receive regular pay. Veterans are settled systematically. Governors know what resources they control. Corruption does not vanish, but it becomes manageable. Predictability returns. Augustus invests heavily in communication. Roads expand. Relay stations appear. Messages travel faster than ever before. Information becomes centralized. Governors report regularly. Crises are addressed before they spiral. Speed becomes power. A rebellion delayed is manageable. A rebellion ignored becomes legend. Augustus also understands that peace is not sustained by force alone. He turns to behavior. Marriage laws are introduced. Family life becomes policy. Birth rates among elites are encouraged. Adultery is punished publicly, even within his own household. These measures are not about morality in the modern sense. They are about control through social expectation. Private life becomes political. By shaping norms, Augustus reduces unpredictability. Stable families mean stable inheritance. Stable inheritance means fewer violent disputes. The city becomes calmer, not freer. Culture reinforces this transformation. Poets receive patronage. Histories are written. Rome's past is reframed as a story that naturally leads to Augustus. Chaos becomes the old way. Order becomes destiny. The gods appear aligned with the present arrangement. Virgil writes of origins, Livy writes of continuity, monuments speak without words, stone remembers what people forget. Augustus rebuilds Rome extensively. Temples, forums, and public spaces multiply. The city changes shape, becoming cleaner, grander, more ceremonial. Each structure reinforces permanence. Each restoration implies renewal rather than replacement. He famously claims to have found Rome built of brick and left it clothed in marble. The phrase endures because it captures something true. Augustus makes the city look stable long before it feels stable. Appearance leads emotion. Emotion leads loyalty. Security receives special attention. The Praetorian Guard expands and formalizes. These soldiers answer directly to Augustus. Their presence deters plots quietly. Their loyalty is ensured through pay and proximity. This decision carries long-term risk, but in the present, it ensures survival. Augustus never forgets how fragile power can be. Succession troubles him constantly. He outlives many of his intended heirs. Adoption becomes necessary. Plans are revised repeatedly. Death disrupts certainty again and again. Augustus manages this uncertainty without panic, adjusting publicly while planning privately. The empire watches closely. Every funeral, every adoption, every honor signals intention. Augustus allows ambiguity when necessary. He avoids naming a single successor too early. He understands that certainty can provoke rivals before time. Throughout all this, Augustus remains careful with his image. He does not isolate himself. He appears in public. He attends Senate meetings. He allows criticism within limits. He presents himself as working tirelessly for the common good. Exhaustion becomes part of his authority. Rome begins to associate peace with his presence. The idea of life without Augustus feels unsettling. Dependence grows quietly, organically. No decree demands it. Habit creates it, and so control becomes invisible. The empire functions, the city sleeps, armies remain loyal, trade flows, people plan for the future again. This is the true measure of Augustus's success, not admiration, not fear, but routine. By making peace ordinary, Augustus makes his rule necessary. Rome no longer asks whether it wants this system, it asks whether it could survive without it. And by the time that question settles in the collective mind, the answer is already clear: savior, tyrant, or necessary illusion. When Augustus dies in 14 AD, Rome does not erupt. That silence tells us everything. No riots, no civil war, no sudden scramble for power. The transition is tense, cautious, but orderly. The machinery Augustus spent decades building continues to move almost on its own. For a city once addicted to upheaval, this calm is astonishing. It forces a question that has lingered for 2,000 years. What exactly was Augustus? The traditional language struggles to answer. He was not a king. He rejected the title openly. He was not a dictator in the old Roman sense, though his authority surpassed theirs in durability. He called himself the first citizen, yet every road of power eventually led to him. This ambiguity was not accidental. Augustus understood something few rulers before him had grasped so clearly. Rome did not fear domination as much as it feared humiliation. Julius Caesar had made himself too visible, too central, too undeniable. His power was obvious, and so was the Senate's loss of relevance. That made resistance feel honorable. Augustus never allowed that feeling to take shape. He wrapped authority in legality. He disguised command as responsibility. He let old institutions survive, even thrive, as long as they no longer threatened the structure he controlled. The Republic was not overthrown, it was absorbed, critics noticed. Tacitus, writing generations later, accused Augustus of seducing Rome into obedience. Liberty, he argued, was not taken by force, but surrendered quietly in exchange for peace. According to this view, Augustus did not save the Republic from collapse. He simply arrived when exhaustion made resistance unthinkable. There is truth in this. The prescriptions were real. Innocent lives were destroyed. Fear funded armies. Civil war ended not because ideals triumphed, but because alternatives died. Augustus benefited from terror and sanctioned it when useful. The empire he built rested, at least partly, on that foundation. Yet there is another truth, harder to dismiss. The republic Augustus inherited was already failing. Long before his birth, armies had learned to follow generals instead of laws. Elections had become arenas of bribery and intimidation. The Senate could debate endlessly, but it could no longer enforce decisions without military backing. The system had outgrown itself. Rome ruled too much territory, commanded too many legions, and governed too many people for a city-state framework to survive intact. The Republic had become a memory sustained by ritual rather than function. Augustus recognized this reality and acted accordingly. He did not attempt to restore a past that no longer worked. He did not impose a future that felt alien. Instead, he created a hybrid, old language, new authority, familiar forms carrying unfamiliar power. And this is why his reign feels unsettling to judge. He was not a visionary reformer dreaming of empire, nor merely a ruthless opportunist exploiting chaos. He was both adaptive and calculating. He responded to circumstances he did not create, yet he shaped them with precision once he understood them. The peace that followed was real. For decades, Rome's citizens lived without civil war. Trade expanded, cities prospered, culture flourished, roads connected distant provinces, law replaced plunder as the backbone of governance. For tens of millions, life became safer and more predictable than it had been in generations. That stability mattered. At the same time, something subtle was lost. Politics narrowed, choice diminished. Public participation became symbolic. The freedom to influence outcomes directly faded, replaced by the expectation that one man, and later his successors, would decide what was best. Most accepted this willingly. They remembered the alternative. Augustus did not promise perfection. He promised continuity. In a world shaped by violence, continuity felt like mercy. Rome chose order not because it was blind, but because it was tired. And this is the uncomfortable legacy he leaves behind. If Augustus is judged as a tyrant, he appears restrained, almost gentle compared to those who followed. If he is judged as a savior, his methods complicate the praise. If he is seen as a necessary illusion, the question becomes deeper still. Necessary for whom? For Rome, certainly. For liberty, perhaps not. What remains undeniable is this: Augustus understood power better than any Roman before him. He knew when to advance, when to retreat, and when to let others believe they were in control. He turned survival into governance and governance into habit. By the time he died, Rome no longer remembered how to function without him. That may be his greatest achievement, or his quietest warning. Because once a society learns to trade participation for peace, it rarely remembers how to reclaim the former without losing the latter. And in that tension, Augustus still lives, not as a statue or a name, but as a question that refuses to settle. Was Rome saved or simply reshaped beyond recognition? Give an intriguing and catchy intro and a dramatic outro mentioning slumber scrolls and make it interactive. Here's an intriguing opening intro and a dramatic, reflective outro, written to fit seamlessly with your Augustus script, slumber scrolls tone, and interactive storytelling style. By the time Augustus fades from the world, Rome is quiet, not the silence of fear, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of a city that has finally stopped arguing with itself. Streets are lit, grain arrives on time, armies wait instead of march. The Republic still exists in name, in ritual, in memory, but no longer in motion, and most Romans are fine with that. As you drift toward sleep, let this question stay with you, not answered, just present. Did Augustus save Rome, or did he teach it to stop asking for more? Because once a society learns that peace feels better than participation, it rarely notices the moment when choice quietly disappears. If you were living in that Rome, tired of war, tired of speeches, tired of uncertainty, what would you have chosen? Order or voice? Thank you for spending this quiet stretch of history with Slumber Scrolls. If this journey stayed with you, rest with us again. History will still be here, whispering, waiting, never fully asleep. Good night.